Hello and welcome. This is rooflemonger, and my friends, in today's video we're going to be talking about the villains of fighting games. Just about every major villain of a fighting game is an icon of their respective franchise. They set the tone for what the game is about. However, as it's gotta be, the fate of any villain is to eventually be defeated by the good guy, and, usually in some sort of definitive fashion where the good guy puts the bad guy in the dirt. However, as, many bad guys tend to do, they keep on coming back, but especially in recent times, in some very high-profile villains who are thought to be often a very, definitive and final fashion in other recent games, and now, hey, they're back. And in my opinion, it's likely that certain other major villains of certain other fighting game franchises might be popping back one way or another as well, right? So why does this keep happening? Why can't, a major fighting game villain, major fighting game baddie, stay in the ground? Now, through this video, I want to talk about some of the higher profile examples of this, but I guess just to get to it, right? The root cause. Why do they keep coming back? Because they're popular, y'all. Like, that's kind of the big deal. The root is, it's not too difficult to puzzle through. Despite the apparent deaths of the big villains, of just about, every fighter, the big villains are kind of at the heart of every fighter and at every franchise. You take out the fact that they're the big bad and they died or whatever, right? They have, some of the best actual character of the characters. They have some of the most memorable dialogue and moments. And a lot of the bosses have a lot of the most memorable movesets in whatever given game they may be in. So it does sort of stand to reason, even if XYZ character is defeated in game 1, that they will reappear in game 2. And even if, their defeat seems a little fatal, they can still come back and still do their thing and still harass the goodies in the end. For example, Geese Howard, famously in the Fatal Fury timeline, because the King of Fighters timeline's a different thing. In the Fatal Fury timeline, he's very dead. Like going into, say, Goro, Mark of the Wolves is how the game opens even. Terry knocked him off a tall building, dead, donezo, sure. But that's exactly how he, quote-unquote, died in the original Fatal Fury, and he's back again. He fell off a building once, he was good to go, fell off a building a second time, well, that's too much. You fall off a building once, whatever. Everyone can survive that. Fall off a building twice, true death, for sure. Basically, the rules are as malleable as they need to be, One man's death was another man's Kryptonian coma, or whatever, right? You can write any excuse you need after the fact. Another reason why, especially in these more modern reincarnations, why some of these characters are coming back is, despite their apparent deaths, they're still very popular, and frankly, popular characters as DLC can make money. Of the most recent example here, as of EVO, which is not that long ago, Heihachi Mishima lives. And Heihachi Mishima was definitively killed super clearly and, well, apparently not that clearly in the end, right? Harada-san, the Tekken director, said up, left, right, down, front and center. He's dead, he's dead, he's dead. Don't worry about it. He's dead forever. That was the point of Tekken 7. He's dead, he's dead. Oh, by the way, part of the Season Pass DLC. Hope you buy him. And you know what? Maybe some people got their feelings up in a bunch. Because, they've been effectively lied to, right? But they're gonna buy that DLC. People still want to play as Heihachi Mishima. And now you sort of get to have your cake and eat it too, right? You get to have your big emotional crescendo of plot. Okay, he's finally done forever. The big, fated climactic battle is now over. And then you get to turn around a couple years later. Hey, $5.99 please. And you know what? Most people do it with a smile on their face. So in the end, it's just legitimately good business. These villains, despite any deaths, are ultra popular. They'll bring the fans in. They'll sell copies of the game. That's kind of what it's all about in the end, right? And kind of despite however you have to twist it lore-wise, most people will be happy that they can play the character they like in the end. And that's what's important, right? The gameplay. Did Bison definitively die at the end of Street Fighter V? Who knows? I guess not. But only Bison has a Psycho Crusher. So if you want that Psycho Crusher, kind of got to go back to the source, right? There's certainly an art to bringing a lot of these characters back. Like King of Fighters 14, famously, the whole point of the story, the arc of the story mode, KOF, very known for its rich storylines, was screw it, all the dead people are back. We got this guy called Verse, who has very little story and lore behind him, but he showed up, and for whatever reason, him showing up, it's like, no, all these dead people, they're back, don't worry about it. And King of Fighters franchise a bit more chained to the lore than most other games. They're a bit more reluctant to bring back quote-unquote dead characters, right? So they just said, screw it, okay, this is our big reset. Now all these ultra-popular characters that were dead over the years, they can come back. So this is how we had the return of Rugal, this is how we had the return of CYS, Chris, Yashiro, Shermie, all very popular characters. But even then again, KOF, if a character's popular enough, they can also just ignore it. Vice and Mature, who are famously announced at EVO, they're going to be added to the King of Fighters 15, right? They've been dead since KOF 96. And they've certainly showed up again after the fact. Like, literally, they're still dead, but they just show up anyways. So what's the amazing lore reason why they keep showing up despite being dead? Oh, they're just ghosts. They're just ghosts. They're still fully physical. They can be around whenever they want. They just didn't accept dying, I guess. So they're still ghosts. Although I guess now in KOF 15, with Verse, now they're actually alive, even though they're going to play the same as they always do when they were dead. I don't know, it's a whole thing, right? Another thing you can do with a dead villain is create the successor character. They mostly play the same, they look similar-ish, but the problem with the successor character is they're not that guy. Shinnok in Mortal Kombat 4. Shinnok is another evil wizard. But he's not a cool evil wizard like Shang Tsung, or, like a muscle wizard like Shao Kahn is, right? So it's kind of ho-hum, right? Shinnok does not have the legacy these other characters do, or going back to SNK, right? King of Fighters, Rugal, one of the most infamous bosses of all time. And then we look at Adelheid. Adelheid is, Rugal's son. He fights just like him for the most part, but he doesn't have that aura. Adelheid's been alive and well in the King of Fighters games for a very long time, and yet people still ask for bring Rugal back, bring Rugal back, bring Rugal back. And hey, eventually they did. Thanks to Verse, because everyone's just magically alive again. Why not? But now let's talk about some of these very famous villains, how they sort of got offed and why they're back. And also specifically taking a look at the case of Geese Howard and how that might play out, because we have Bison come back, we had Heihachi come back, and smart money is some way, somehow, Geese will probably return. So let's start with M Bison, because he has the easiest case to make out of everybody why he comes back, because that's a core part of the character. Ever since the start, it is very much established that he is hard to kill for real. Be it a myriad of reasons. If he has the Psycho Drive up, he can't die while the Psycho Drive is a thing. Say you do kill him, then he's got a million clone bodies to replace it. Other characters like Cammy, Ed, Falk, their whole reason for being is they were replacement bodies for M Bison. Also very indicative that M Bison has a type, because he likes the blondes. Now say you get M Bison away from the Psycho Drive, say he doesn't have a clone to switch bodies to, he can just straight up possess people. Like when he was famously defeated at the end of Street Fighter 2. He just possessed Rose, and then, fill in some blanks because they don't really spell it out for you, but then he could get his body back one way or another. In Street Fighter 6, Akuma, the guy who killed him in Street Fighter 2, he called Bison a man with no fear of death. Also called him careless because, he got the sneak attack on him and did him in. But yeah, there is no reason for Bison to really fear death as it stands. Through some gimmick, through some giga, through something, he's always going to come back. That's kind of integral to the character. So this is established Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha, Street Fighter 4. Like, he's hard to beat, right? The one thing was come Street Fighter 5. Street Fighter 5 Bison was different. He looked older, he had white hair, he moved slower, he was always a very classically fast character, and he's like the slowest character in the game in Street Fighter 5 for the most part, right? So you felt something might be different. And as we showed the clip earlier in the video, yeah, I guess Street Fighter 5 Bison died, he blew up in little glowy bits, he's died many times, but this one at least felt a bit more final, but turns out, hey, not so much. No matter how many times he dies, like it's part of the character, he always comes back. Only thing with him coming back this time is they're not really bothering to explain it. He just wakes up in an alley naked and Vegeta is bothering him, beats him up, takes their clothes. Somewhere along the way, he also gets a sick horse, so that's cool, I guess, right? This is not terribly well explained. We've gone deep on the lore of Bison and his return, and there's no real satisfactory answer to why he's actually back, other than he's a good character for the roster, his gameplay's fairly unique, and people would enjoy playing him, and the storyline reason why he's here is, frankly, sort of secondary. He's explicitly an amnesiac, at least they went the mile to have him drain the knowledge, the memories of whatever Bison they had on copy in the Shadaloo headquarters, so that's something, I guess. He's now vaguely aware he's Bison, and he has, the classic Psycho Power stuff, sure. So in the end, M Bison is a character with a long legacy and, valid lore reasons to keep coming back time after time after time. Although this time around, it's not terribly well explained, but they kind of hand wave it away. Oh well, hope you enjoy the DLC. And he's quite popular, people enjoy him, legacy character, so hey, people will buy that DLC. Now, let's look at Heihachi Mishima. So, Heihachi, very definitively, no question possible, died in Tekken 7. They explicitly went out of their way to do the thing, where one Mishima tosses another Mishima off the edge of a very high cliff, and specifically this time into liquid hot magma. And there's no pull away here. Kazuya is not distracted. He's actively looking at Heihachi going into the lava. A wizard didn't save him. Akuma didn't show up and say, hey buddy, I got you one more time before I head out and we pretend I'm not canon anymore. He went into the lava. Kazuya watched it. And what's the end result? He's back. And not only is he back, he's better than ever. He's literally younger than he was before. His hair is gray now instead of shock white. So maybe, a lava bath is great for the hair and the skin. I don't know. The whole selling point, the crux of the Tekken 7 story was this is kind of the definitive end of the Kazuya versus Heihachi storyline. And the Tekken 7 cinematic story mode was kinda all over the place in terms of quality, but I'll give him that this last sequence of Kazuya vs. Heihachi was absolutely the pinnacle of the story. This stuff hit on all cylinders in terms of the choreography, the feeling, the emotion, kind of the everything that they were selling. It all worked, and it all worked really, really, really well. So now, does bringing Heihachi back as a DLC character kind of cheapen and devalue the story? Yes, absolutely it does. But when Heihachi was announced, you better believe people were so happy. Does him coming back mean basically this whole storyline beforehand means absolutely nothing? Yes, it does mean absolutely nothing. This fight might as well not have happened, as far as I can tell, unless this secondary story mode they're going to introduce in Tekken 8 somehow really wraps this together well. We do have at least this one final punch. They show it in the Heihachi trailer, and it's kind of a selling point, right? You can see kind of that fist mark permanently etched into Heihachi's chest. So did Kazuya transfer devil power into him or something, and that's why he survived the lava? I don't know. They'll give a reason, I'm sure. Will it be a satisfying reason? Well, we'll see. But the main deal is people are excited, just like M Bison, right? Doesn't matter whatever happened before, they're excited to see the character, they're hype, and when the time comes, they'll open their wallet and they'll buy the DLC. It'll sell copies of the game. People who didn't buy the game already might buy it now that Heihachi's back. It's the marketing aspect of it all. And I'm harping on that specifically because it leads us directly into our third and final case. That being the case of Geese Howard. So Geese Howard in the Fatal Fury timeline specifically, because the King of Fighters and Fatal Fury timelines are two different continuities. In Fatal Fury timeline, he is dead and has been dead for quite some time. At the end of Real Bout Fatal Fury, Geese and Terry have their final battle. And calling back to the first Fatal Fury, Terry kind of knocks him over the ledge of the building. But this time, he catches him before he falls. And Geese, being the ultimate arrogant villain that he is, when he has, his life literally saved by Terry, He refuses it. He spits in his face. He would rather fall to his death than be saved by Terry Bogard. And thus, Geese dies, seemingly enough. And then with this specific death, Terry, I'm not going to say he's happy about it, right? He doesn't like Geese, but maybe not happy about his death. And then he's sort of stuck with Geese's legacy, that being Rock Howard. So Rock is Geese's biological son, and Terry, through some sense of shame, through some sense of responsibility, adopts him, as Rock's mother is also dead as well. So he's orphaned when Terry kills Geese. And this event of Geese's death and Rock's adoption is effectively the crux of the entire Garou Mark of the Wolves storyline. We're past the older Fatal Furies, there's a bit of a time skip. We're in the far future of 2008. Rock is no longer a boy, he is a young man, a young adult. Terry is nebulously older. And basically, new era, new adventures, new characters. Mark of the Wolves is very much like a new generation style game. Say like, Street Fighter 3. We got some of the classics, like Terry's there, sure. But, we got a whole new cast of characters. And a lot of those characters well received, they would eventually make their way to other games like King of Fighters as well. So now we're sort of at the point, okay, so Geese is dead. So why bring him back, right? Especially because we've since moved on and we have the new generation of characters. Well, there's two roads to it, right? Just let him stay dead, move on with the new cast. The new cast, they got their own stories. Maybe some of them aren't as deep as some other ones, right? Like Marco Rodriguez, formerly known as Kushnud Butt. Someone beat up a student of his before, now he wanted revenge. And in the new game, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, compared to Mark of the Wolves, now someone stole a sign, so he wants his sign back. So yeah, basically everyone's got their own stories, right? And Geese can stay dead and go from there. But then there's the angle of, well, let's bring Geese back some way, somehow. The first argument for it is the easiest argument in the world to make, regardless of whatever lore reasons. Geese is ultra popular. He is one of the most famous bad guys of gaming ever. People absolutely will want to play him. He will sell copies of the game. People will be happy to see him. Once again, we're not including any lore stuff, right? But just the fact of Geese existing would be a net positive for the game. I think it's sort of hard to argue against it. Once again, taking lore out of the reason. Like his Tekken 7 appearance as a guest, right? Was a huge deal. Also sort of helped the fact that he sort of ran the game for a while too. His moveset, his personality, his gameplay, they're all iconic. And yes, Rock has it to a degree. We talked about successor characters earlier in the video, but Rock still is his own guy. He has a Geese flavor to him, but he is decidedly not Geese. This little counter montage, I think, says it all, really. Rock existing and his moveset does not invalidate Geese showing up any way, shape, or form. They both show up in King of Fighters 2 all the time. And once again, King of Fighters, different timeline, and KOF, he's alive just fine. And why is that exactly? Well, you assume the events of Fatal Fury and all that played out exactly as they did, except for the part where he fell for the second time, he just didn't die. He survived the first time, had some scrolls. The second time around, there's also some other scrolls, specifically the Jin scrolls. It's kind of a big deal in Fatal Fury 3. In the Fatal Fury timeline, it's stated that he destroyed the Jin scrolls. And what do? Well, they offer immortality. In the Fatal Fury timeline, he's not really down with that. He got them to prove he's great so that he could get them. And once he proved he could do it, then he's like, screw it, I don't really need it. And he allegedly destroys them. And that's kind of the breaking point between that and the King of Fighters timeline. In the King of Fighters timeline, he's obviously alive. And he talks about secret scrolls, and this is why he knew verse was going to be a thing. And you could assume that those scrolls are the Jin scrolls. Doubly so because, well, he's alive, right? And he's alive for a reason, so maybe he has that immortality. In King of Fighters 11, one of his win quotes, he's saying straight up, yo, I'm immortal. So the big timeline difference is he has the immortality scrolls in the King of Fighters timeline. He doesn't in the Fatal Fury timeline. So I make this little detour to talk about the story and the differences between Fatal Fury and King of Fighters, specifically to bring it back to the lore end of things. You can sell Geese fine purely on the strength of the character and the gameplay, but I know lore is very important to a lot of people. And my argument for Geese Howard in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is, I think you can justify it just fine lore-wise. There's some strong reasons for it. First of which is, yes, is Mark of the Wolves, you know, a new generation, a new story to a degree, but the whole story exists on the backbone of Geese Howard. Rock is a salty boy because Geese did not treat his wife, Rock's mother, very well. And Marie, who was Geese's wife, is kind of at the heart of everything. Like, the big bad of Mark of the Wolves is Kine. And who is Kine? He is Marie's brother, aka Geese's brother-in-law. And he's specifically a thing because he stepped up when Geese passed away. And the big reveal at the end of Mark of the Wolves is this whole, you know, thing about, you know, Rock being obsessed with his mother and that's why he hates Geese and all this. It's kind of all misinformation as Marie is alive and well. So once again, kind of all roads lead to Geese. And I've had interviews with the SK developers on this channel, and it's already directly stated that Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, the sequel coming out sometime early next year, is a direct continuation of this plotline, among other plotlines. Also, City of the Wolves is where the main Fatal Fury cast is re-entering the picture, like say, Billy Kane. And now he's also explicitly the head of the Howard connection, the Geese Howard crime family, after Geese's apparent death. So we're bringing in the older characters again. The new generation aspect is sort of blending back in with the old school stuff. And the old school stuff is bringing in even more Geese content. Billy's whole reason for existence was to be Geese's right-hand man. And there's almost assuredly nobody that took Geese's death worse than Billy. And just by the sheer fact that he exists in the game at all kind of amps that factor a bit. Let alone who else might show up, right? So, will Geese be base launcher? I don't know, right? Who's to say? Once again, we talked about Geese being popular, and M Bison DLC, gotta pay a little bit extra. Heihachi DLC, gotta pay a little bit extra. And if Geese were to show up, I bet people would probably pay a little bit extra. So maybe he doesn't show up in the base roster, maybe he's DLC down the road, who knows? But let me just give you 3 ways they can bring him back that are lore positive reasons. Maybe not the best reasons in the end, but 3 ways you could bring him back, and people will kind of just have to accept it. Way number 1 you can do it is, you know, Geese fell to his death, big final climactic battle against Terry, all that kind of stuff. He's done so, and well, no, he's not. He already survived once, right? Let's say we do the King of Fighters thing, and yes, he does have the Gen Scrolls, you know. They say he burned them or whatever in the Fatal Fury timeline, he got rid of them. And say that was all a lie, that was all a misdirection, he fell and now he's been biding his time ever since then. Perfectly plausible, this kind of plotline has been done to death in a million other things. Villain goes into hiding for a while, comes back, sure, why not? Not exactly a high art, but in the end, most people just accept it. Like, frankly put, Kine is not as strong as a villain as Geese. So if you have Geese as the big bad in secret or whatever, it just kind of all wraps up better in the end. Second way we can do it is same formula. He fell off the building. Sucks for him. He died. And yes, he died. And he stays dead. And we use that death through whatever mojo you want to story up, right? We use that death as a vessel to introduce Nightmare Geese. So what is Nightmare Geese? Nightmare Geese is a little bit of a what-if character. Concept is, you know, this is definitely dead Geese, but he's still here. He's got, you know, spectral evil powers, which for convenience's sake happen to be his exact normal moveset anyways. And depending on the version of Nightmare Geese, he might look a little rough and a little extra dead and zombie-like. And basically, it's an easy out, right? So that way you can still say he died through whatever magic of his power or maybe some other scroll. He becomes Nightmare Geese and then gets to terrorize everybody. And then as a fun little bonus, you can have his classic skin as a freebie. Easy out, easy way to do it. And the third way to bring Geese back is to go the successor character route again. And no, I'm not talking Rock. Yes, Rock has some of his moves, but as we talked about before, they're still 2 very distinct and different characters. So who am I talking about? I'm talking about Marie. Yes, Marie, the wife of Geese Howard, who is very much alive and is basically like the crux of the plot of going into Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. She can be the successor to the Geese Howard moveset. She's a total blank slate. Nobody actually knows anything about this character. Whatever memories Rock Howard has of her, she was just a little kid when he thought she died, right? And she never went out of her way to tell Rock she's alive, and she's alive, right? So maybe she's in on it. I don't know. Geese's wife, you'd have to assume they were in love at some point. And one of the big, trendy things of fighting games is people teaching other people their moves and moveset. And who's to say he never taught his wife his moveset? And what do you get when you do that? Well, you get Lady Geese. Now, I'm not specifically saying it's going to be exactly like the King of Fighters All-Star version of Lady Geese or whatever. Marie could be her own specific style and look and appearance. But inheriting the Geese moveset, I think, is a very valid way to go about it. And that way you can have, that style of Geese persist. You have that exact legacy. It's still like very much related to Geese without having to bring Geese back. And then turns out Marie's like a weird jerk, just like Geese always was too. Match made in heaven or hell. Turns out both Geese and Marie abandoned Rock. Nobody wants that kid. So that's 3 ideas I have. All 3 can work within the lore, some better than others. The new Fatal Fury, it's been 25 years since the last Fatal Fury game, and they do want to be faithful to the story, but going, a quarter of a century without the last game in the series and not having its most famous signature and defining villain some way, some shape, some form represented, I think that would just kind of be a misstep. Have to wait and see. Maybe he's gone forever. Maybe he's not launch roster and he's just DLC. And then it's like a what if character. I don't know, right? But I think it would be cool to bring him back no matter what. So that's just some of my thoughts on the matter just in general, right? The fighting game villain is a big part of the fighting game experience. They add a lot of flavor, they add a lot of character to the games they're in, and that's why through, by hook or by crook, even when they're dead, they seem to come back time and time and time again. Even when they're seemingly defeated, even when it's seemingly all over, they gotta take, the coward's way out, or maybe kill them, or whatever happens, in the end, even if it takes a couple decades, they'll find their way back to us. You can't keep a good bad guy down. I don't know, is there a moral to all this? Even back in the 90s, death was hardly a handicap for any fighting game character. Mortal Kombat was already infamous for it. Characters would come and go and die and whatever between various Mortal Kombats, and they'd just be alive in the next game. No big deal. Johnny Cage killed in Mortal Kombat 3, back fresh as a daisy in Mortal Kombat 4. Shao Kahn dead at the end of Mortal Kombat 2? Nope, turns out he's back from Mortal Kombat 3. He's dead at the end of Mortal Kombat 3 and literally explodes? Nope. I guess it's the kind of exploding that you can just sort of walk away from and shake off. Killed in the beginning of the Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance intro? It looks like they killed him. They said they killed him, and it did kill him until the next game rolled around and they decided, nah, they didn't kill him. He's actually alive the whole time. Funny how it all works, right? In the end, every death is merely one hand wave away from not happening. Or maybe it did happen, but they got better. Or maybe you got the wrong guy. It looked like the right guy that you killed, but turns out it was someone else entirely. Lore in fighting games is some of the most flexible you'll find in any genre of gaming. In just about any other format, the characters exist to serve the story, but in fighting games, the story exists to serve the characters. And that's sort of the crux of everything we're talking about, because when a character's popular enough, especially the big bads, the villains, will bend the story any way it takes to the point of breaking to make sure they come back time and time and time again. And is that a bad thing? I would say no, not really in the end, because the people like the characters and we want to see them return, however silly way it may be. Although I'm really interested to see how exactly they're going to explain Heihachi not only surviving falling in lava and covering his whole body, yet somehow coming out looking the best he's looked in decades, younger and more vital than ever, right? And I'm sure they're going to explain it in the perfect, stupid, just beautiful fighting game way. And we're going to come out of it saying, of course! Why didn't I think of it earlier? Kazuya's greatest mistake was throwing him into the lava. He basically just handed Heihachi the victory. And it'll all somehow perfectly make sense in the end. So all that said, that is the end of the video, my friends. So, longer topic, topic I'm very involved in myself because I love fighting game story, I love fighting game lore, but I also love the characters, and I don't really want anyone to be gone forever, right? So let me know what you think in the comments below, and since this is a longer video, if you could spare a like, that'd be really nice. That said though, that is the video, so thank you very much for watching, hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some fighting games.